The Galactic Empire was a monument to conquest and control, spanning thousands of star systems and binding countless species under its iron rule. For the humans of the outer colonies, it was a cage of glass and steel, its glittering facade hiding the grinding machinery of oppression. Yet for decades, humanity endured, outgunned, outnumbered, and outwardly compliant. But the execution of General Marcus Vallon would shatter that fragile peace, lighting the fuse of rebellion. General Vallon had been a symbol of defiance for humanity, his name whispered with reverence in the corridors of power and in the dimly lit taverns of distant colonies. He had fought in the frontier conflicts, where he earned the grudging respect of even his alien adversaries. But the Empire viewed him as a dangerous relic of humanity's militaristic past, a man unwilling to bow. The spark that set the tragic chain of events in motion came on the remote colony of Kalis-4. There, Vallon and his forces had intercepted an Imperial mining operation extracting forbidden resources from a planet declared off-limits by treaty. When confronted, the Empire's overseers dismissed the humans' protests with contempt. Vallon, unwilling to let the violation stand, led a daring raid to reclaim the colony. The raid was a tactical masterpiece, swift and decisive. Imperial forces were routed, and the mining equipment was seized. However, the victory came at a cost. The Empire retaliated swiftly, dispatching a fleet to blockade the planet and issuing an ultimatum: surrender or face annihilation. Refusing to gamble with the lives of civilians, Vallon chose to turn himself over to Imperial custody, trusting that his sacrifice would spare the colony for the time being. Vallon's capture became a spectacle. Dragged before the Triarch Council on the capital world of Zarnith, he stood unflinching, his square jaw set with grim resolve. The trial was a sham, a theater designed to showcase Imperial dominance. The alien dignitaries on the council, cold-blooded Scytherans with their translucent skin, hulking Drakari warriors with scales like obsidian, and the enigmatic insectoid KRYTH, pronounced their verdict in unison: death by hanging. The punishment was deliberate, chosen for its barbarity. Hanging was an ancient method, steeped in human history, and its use was intended to humiliate as much as it was to execute. On the appointed day, Vallon was marched through the streets of Zarnith, flanked by towering Drakari guards. Thousands of aliens jeered as the human general, clad in his tattered uniform, ascended the gallows. In the final moments, Vallon addressed the broadcast cameras. His voice, though hoarse from captivity, rang out with unshaken conviction. To my people, do not mourn me. Fight! For every human who dreams of freedom, stand and resist. Let my death be the seed of something greater. The platform beneath him dropped, and silence fell over the crowd. Moments later, the broadcast cut out, but the image of Vallon's lifeless body, swinging against the backdrop of alien architecture, seared itself into the minds of billions. News of Vallon's execution spread like wildfire. In the sprawling megacities of Earth, workers paused to watch the grim footage on public holoscreens. In the outer colonies, miners and farmers wept or clenched their fists in fury. In the shadows of orbital stations, former soldiers began dusting off old weapons. On Mars, Admiral Jonathan Kane watched the broadcast with a stoic expression. A veteran of countless battles, Kane had fought alongside Vallon during the frontier conflicts. The two men had shared victories, defeats, and the unyielding belief that humanity deserved better than subjugation. As the broadcast ended, Kane rose from his chair and turned to his officers. Vallon's death will not be in vain, Kane said, his voice steady but heavy with resolve. The Empire thinks they've silenced us. They've only given us a martyr. Prepare the fleet. In the days that followed, resistance groups across human space began coordinating under the banner of the United Human Alliance, UHA. Colonies that had long remained silent for fear of retribution openly declared their allegiance. Weapons were smuggled, plans were drawn, and spies infiltrated Imperial installations. The Empire, confident in its supremacy, dismissed these stirrings as insignificant. To them, humans were a species of limited potential, capable of moments of brilliance but fundamentally disorganized. This miscalculation would prove catastrophic. In the shadows, Kane and his advisors formulated their first major offensive. The plan was audacious. Strike at the Empire's supply lines and disrupt its ability to project power across the human colonies. But first, Kane needed a symbol to unify humanity's scattered forces. He found it in Valen's final words, which were replayed endlessly in recruitment videos and broadcast to every corner of human space. On the moon of Titan, a massive rally was held. Thousands of recruits stood at attention as Kane addressed them. "The Empire thought they could break us by taking Valen," he said, his voice rising above the crowd. "But they have only strengthened our resolve. We will not bow. We will not break. Humanity will rise, and we will reclaim our destiny." The cheers echoed across the frozen landscape, a cry of defiance that would soon be heard among the stars. As the UHA fleet prepared for its first engagement, Valen's memory burned brightly in the hearts of every human soldier. His death had been a tragedy, but it was also the spark that turned despair into determination. The war was coming, and humanity was ready to fight. The air in the command chamber of the Resolute was tense, crackling with the weight of decisions that would shape the future of humanity. Admiral Jonathan Kane stood at the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the holomap of the Galactic Empire's sprawling territories. Around him, officers murmured calculations, tactical data flickering on their screens. Kane's expression was carved from stone, his piercing eyes fixed on the glowing markers that represented Imperial strongholds. "This isn't a fight we chose," Kane began, his voice low but resonant, "but it's one we'll finish." The United Human Alliance, UHA, was no longer a collection of isolated colonies, but a growing war machine. Valen's death had galvanized humanity in ways the Empire could not have foreseen. Soldiers, engineers, and strategists poured into hastily established command centers, bringing with them a shared determination to defy their oppressors. Kane, with his unyielding discipline and sharp tactical mind, had become the face of this movement, a role he accepted with both pride and sorrow. "We need a victory," Kane said, turning to Commander Elias Drake, his trusted second-in-command. Drake, a veteran of countless skirmishes, was known for his unorthodox thinking and a sharp wit that often masked his grim determination. Drake nodded, his brow furrowed as he studied the map. "The Empire's supply routes are stretched thin in the outer colonies. We hit them there, we cripple their logistics. But it has to be fast, before they can reinforce." Kane's lips tightened into a thin line. "What's our target?" Drake tapped a glowing point on the map. "Trianes, a resource hub for their fleet operations. It's heavily defended, but if we take it, we not only disrupt their supplies, but send a message that humanity won't be cowed." The plan was daring. Trianes was a fortress world, its skies bristling with orbital defenses and imperial fleets. But Kane knew the psychological impact of such a victory would be immeasurable. He nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We strike in 3 days." The preparations were a frenzy of activity. On board the Resolute and other ships in the UHA fleet, engineers worked tirelessly to modify aging human vessels. Many of these ships were relics of the frontier conflicts, outdated and patched together with salvaged parts. But humanity's ingenuity shone in their transformations. Makeshift electromagnetic pulse, EMP, generators were installed to disrupt the Empire's advanced systems, and railguns were upgraded to punch through alien shields. Among the soldiers, there was no shortage of volunteers. Men young and old, miners and factory workers, even former mercenaries, all were ready to fight. Training was brutal, compressed into hours instead of weeks, but the recruits endured. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a future. The fleet departed under the cover of darkness, their engines running low to avoid detection. Kane stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching as the stars shifted around them. The silence of space was deceptive, masking the storm that was about to break. As the fleet neared Trianes, the tension aboard the ships became palpable. Kane addressed the crew through the comms, his voice calm but firm. Today, we strike not just for revenge, but for hope. For every colony that has suffered under imperial rule, for every name erased by their tyranny, we fight. Remember Valen's words. Unity is our strength. Together, we will prevail. The attack on Trianes was swift and brutal. The Empire's initial confidence proved to be their undoing. Expecting a disorganized rabble, they were instead met with a coordinated assault that targeted their critical systems. Human ships darted through the defensive grid, their EMP weapons disabling Imperial cruisers before they could react. On the ground, human Marines deployed in drop pods, hitting supply depots and command centers with surgical precision. Commander Drake led the charge, his voice crackling over the comms as he barked orders and rallied his men. Despite fierce resistance, the Imperial forces were unprepared for the humans' unconventional tactics. The turning point came when a squad of human engineers managed to infiltrate the planetary shield generator. Using improvised explosives, they brought the entire system down, leaving the Imperial garrison exposed. Kane seized the opportunity, ordering an orbital bombardment that shattered the Empire's remaining defenses. When the dust settled, Trianes belonged to the UHA. The Empire's banners were torn down, replaced by the emblem of human unity, a starburst framed by interlocking rings. For the first time in decades, humanity had not just resisted but triumphed. In the aftermath of the battle, Kane walked through the smoldering ruins of the Imperial Command Center. His officers trailed behind him, their faces weary but triumphant. As they reached the central plaza, Drake turned to Kane. This was a gamble, Drake admitted, his tone edged with relief. But it paid off. Kane nodded, his gaze sweeping over the crowd of human soldiers and liberated colonists gathering in the square. This is just the beginning. The Empire will retaliate, and we must be ready. But today, we've shown them that humanity will not break. Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing across the plaza. For a brief moment, the weight of the war lifted, replaced by a sense of hope. Kane allowed himself a small smile, though he knew the road ahead would be long and perilous. As the fleet prepared to depart, Kane issued a final order. Broadcast the footage of this victory to every human colony. Let them see what we're capable of. Let them know that the Empire can be defeated. The images of Trianes, its liberated streets and the tattered remains of Imperial banners, spread like wildfire. Across human space, the message was clear. The war had begun in earnest, and humanity was ready to fight for its future. The Empire's retaliation came with the fury of a cornered predator. From the depths of its sprawling dominion, it summoned fleets larger than humanity had ever encountered, each bristling with weapons capable of annihilating entire colonies. The victory at Trianes had shown the Galactic Empire that humans were no longer compliant subjects, but a threat that demanded eradication. Admiral Jonathan Kane stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. Reports of brutal reprisals streamed in from across human space. Imperial dreadnoughts raised colonies suspected of aiding the rebellion, leaving charred ruins where thriving settlements once stood. Refugees flooded UHA-controlled systems, bringing stories of destruction and terror. Kane's expression remained stoic, though the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He turned to Commander Elias Drake, whose usual sharp wit was absent. Drake's face was set with grim determination as he studied the holomap. "They're cutting through our outer colonies like a blade," Drake said, gesturing to the blinking markers that indicated recent attacks. "We're spread too thin to counter them on every front." Kane nodded. "We don't need to stop them everywhere. We need to stop them somewhere they don't expect." The UHA strategy had always relied on asymmetry. The Empire wielded overwhelming force, but its size made it cumbersome. Kane planned to exploit that weakness by choosing the battlefield, a system far from the main theaters of war, but critical to the Empire's logistics. "Target?" Drake asked, his voice clipped. Kane pointed to a system near the edges of human-controlled space. The Nevers Corridor. It's their primary supply route to the Mid-Rim territories. If we sever it, we stall their momentum. Preparations for the operation were swift but meticulous. The fleet was reinforced with new hybrid ships, a testament to humanity's ingenuity. Salvaged Imperial components were integrated into human designs, creating vessels that blended human adaptability with alien precision. Engineers worked around the clock, crafting weapons that could penetrate Imperial defenses and disabling their AI-controlled fleets. The battle for the Nevers Corridor began with a calculated deception. Kane dispatched a small decoy force to engage Imperial scouts, drawing attention away from the true objective. As the Empire repositioned its fleets, the main UHA force moved into the corridor under the cover of electronic countermeasures. On the day of the assault, Kane addressed his officers aboard the Resolute. "This is not just a battle for territory," he said, his voice steady. "This is a battle for survival. The Empire believes its strength makes it invincible. Today, we show them the power of human resolve." The initial clash was ferocious. Imperial destroyers swarmed the UHA fleet, their plasma cannons carving through space. But the human forces held their ground, using the narrow corridor to neutralize the Empire's numerical advantage. Commander Drake led a daring strike on the flagship of the Imperial fleet, piloting his vessel dangerously close to disable its shield generators. As the tide of battle shifted, the Empire deployed a superweapon, a gravitic warhead capable of creating localized singularities. The weapon threatened to collapse the entire corridor, trapping both fleets in an inescapable gravitational pull. Kane made a bold decision. "Deploy the Aegis Protocol," Kane ordered. The Aegis Protocol was a desperate measure, a coordinated effort to detonate EMP charges across the battlefield, temporarily disabling all technology. It was a gamble that could leave both sides stranded, but Kane knew the Empire's reliance on automation would make them more vulnerable than the human crews. The EMP charges detonated in sequence, sending waves of disruption through the corridor. Imperial ships faltered, their systems flickering and failing. Human ships, with their manually operated fallback systems, regained control faster. The battle turned into a brutal close-quarters engagement. Human Marines boarded Imperial vessels, overwhelming alien crews with their relentless determination. In the end, the Imperial fleet was shattered, its survivors retreating into the void. The Nevers Corridor belonged to humanity. As the battlefield cleared, Kane stood silently on the bridge, watching the wreckage drift through space. The cost of victory weighed heavily on him. Dozens of human ships had been lost, and countless lives along with them. But the Empire's advance had been stopped. Drake approached, his uniform scorched from battle, but his eyes alight with grim satisfaction. "We've done it, Admiral," he said. "The corridor is ours." Kane nodded, his expression unreadable. "We've won the day, but the war is far from over." In the days following the battle, the UHA broadcasted their victory across human space. Footage of Imperial ships burning and human Marines raising the UHA banner became a rallying cry for resistance. Recruitment surged, and more colonies pledged their support to the cause. But Kane knew the Empire would not relent. They would return with greater force, and humanity would need to be ready. In secret, Kane began planning the next phase of the war, a strike at the heart of the Empire itself. As the fleet prepared for its next mission, Kane gathered his officers for a final briefing. "We've proven that we can fight," he said. "Now, we must prove that we can endure. The Empire will come at us with everything they have, but as long as we stand united, they will never break us." The room erupted in a chorus of determination, every officer standing straighter, their resolve hardening. Kane allowed himself a rare moment of hope. The tide had turned, but the storm was far from over.